Welcome to The 12 Houses, Episode 1, a plain English field guide to the rooms of your life. If signs describe your style, houses describe context, the where and when your energy actually lands. Today, we'll walk room by room, from the front door of identity to the back garden of recovery, self and body, resources and skills, local mind and voice, roots and family culture, joy and creative risk, daily maintenance and health, partnership and agreements, shared resources and honest intimacy, belief and horizons, vocation and reputation, friends and networks, and the quiet room where you reset. I'll show you how to spot each house in real life, how to follow the house ruler, the planet managing that room, and one tiny practice to keep that space livable this week. No jargon, just usable pictures you'll remember the next time life rings the doorbell. Let's start at the front door. House 1 is the entryway and the skin, how you meet the world, how people meet you, and the posture you naturally assume when you begin anything. If you've ever walked into a room and felt an immediate tone from someone before they said a word, you were feeling their first house in action. The sign on the cusp of your first house is your ascendant, and it sets the pace. Quick or measured, playful or serious, direct or diplomatic. If planets live here, they color your presence. Mars in the first feels like permission to act, even when you're quiet. Venus in the first smooths edges and invites connection, even when your busy Saturn in the first can read as composed or intimidating until trust arrives, then as dependable. A simple way to work your first house is to pick one ritual you do in the first 10 minutes of your day that matches the tone you want to bring. Water on your face, a stretch that lengthens your spine, a single sentence that names what today is for. First house care is not vanity. It's calibration. The day takes your cue. House 2 is the pantry, the wallet, the tool bench, the space where you handle resources and build self-worth that can survive Tuesdays. People reduce it to money, but money is just one instrument your second house plays. This room asks, what do I own? What do I keep? How do I earn? And what do I call worth it when no one is grading me? If the second house is hungry, you'll chase price tags that don't feel like you, save in a way that feels like punishment, or give away energy and never invoice yourself for the labor. The fix is not shame. It's a values-based budget and one honest earning ritual. Decide what makes a week feel like a decent life. Quiet conversation, craft, movement, food that tastes like dignity. And fund those on purpose. Then match your earning to your temperament. If your chart likes sprints, stack small jobs and ship often. If it loves mastery, price for depth, and give yourself longer horizons, planets in the second house will show you the levers. Mercury earns by translating and connecting. Venus earns by curating and beautifying. Mars earns by moving and finishing. Jupiter earns by teaching and expanding. Saturn earns by structuring and stewarding. Worth grows when you act like a good steward of what you already have, not when you perform prosperity for people who won't pay your bills. House 3 is the neighborhood and the hallway conversation. It governs siblings and peers, errands and emails, the 1,000 microcommunications that braid your day together. This is the room where your voice develops, not as a performance, but as a habit. If this house is noisy, you're juggling threads without closure. If it's underfed, you drift and call it research, while the draft never starts. The simplest third house practice is a daily communication block with Rails. 15 to 30 minutes at a set time to triage messages, send short replies, and capture ideas in a place your future self will actually find. If Mercury or Uranus lives here, you'll think best while moving, turn calls into walks. If Saturn lives here, clean formats soothe friction, agree on shared templates and response windows so your nervous system doesn't treat every email like a test. If Neptune lives here, sound matters. Pick auditory environments that help your brain focus without aggression. The gift of the third house is agility. The ability to turn life's small frictions into flow because you gave your conversations a home. And house 4 is the kitchen table after everyone leaves, the ancestor drawer, the bed you sleep in, the room of roots, family stories, memory, safety, and the private no one else gets to edit. You could have a penthouse and still feel homeless if this room isn't tended. The sign on this cusp describes the kind of nest that calms you. Planets here describe the themes that echo through your house and your lineage. The practical magic is ridiculously small. 5 minutes to make your bed, the drawer that finally opens smoothly, soup in the freezer, a photo you actually like in a frame you didn't hate buying. If the fourth house holds old storms, you don't have to mythologize them. You can name the pattern, choose one counter ritual, and repeat it until your nervous system stops looking for lightning boundaries that protect this room are not selfish. They're the reason you can be kind elsewhere. House 5 is the studio and the playground and the stage. It's romance and theater and the way you express yourself without asking permission. People call it creativity. I call it the room where your life remembers it's alive. You don't have to be an artist to feed it. You just have to do something for joy that isn't a transaction. If this room is starving, you'll either chase attention you don't actually want or become an excellent critic of things you secretly long to try. Start with 10 minutes. Doodle badly. Dance to one song. Write 3 lines. Play with your kid like your phone fell in a lake. The sign here describes flavor. Planets describe steaks. Sun here wants to glow. Give it a little spotlight. Venus here wants beauty. Let it choose the color. Mars here wants risk. Give it a safe jump. Saturn here wants craft. Give it reps and standards. Jupiter wants scale. Give it an audience sometimes. The 5th house doesn't require applause, it requires sincerity. House 6 is the utility room and the calendar, the place where care becomes routine, where the body asks for maintenance and work asks for method. If you've ever tried to change your life and discovered the sink full of dishes was your real spiritual teacher, you've met the 6th. This room isn't glamorous, but it will save your career and your relationships if you treat it as sacred. The simplest 6th house magic is the boring ritual that prevents exciting emergencies. Set your meds the same day weekly. Tidy for 7 minutes before bed. Prepare tomorrow's clothes tonight. Eat protein early. Put check-ins on repeat so you don't perform heroics later. When planets live here, they want to serve. Mercury here needs lists. It can finish. Venus needs environments that feel kind to inhabit. Mars needs movement before meetings. Saturn needs a definition of done that doesn't change mid-sprint. If you call this room shoulds, you'll resent it and it will leak into every other room. If you call it scaffolding, you'll rest easier because your life finally has railings. House 7 is the guest room and the contract drawer. Partnerships, clients, open enemies, the mirror of you and me where your habits meet someone else's. This isn't only romance, it's any one-to-one bond where promises and patterns matter. The 7th house doesn't create compatibility, it reveals dynamics. The sign here tells you what kind of partner you pick and why. Planets show what you keep recreating. Mars here brings heat, wonderful for shared action, tricky if conflict hygiene is missing. Neptune here brings romance and fog, soulful bonding, confusion when boundaries blur. Saturn here brings duty and durability, long-term bonds, lessons about fairness and timing. The practical 7th house skill is agreements. How you start, how you decide, how you repair, how you end. If you did nothing else but ask decision or discussion before big talks and what does repair look like after hard ones, this room would feel less like a courtroom and more like a workshop. House 8 is the lockbox and the basement, the inheritance ledger and the tattoo, shared finances, taxes, debts, intimacy, taboos, endings, healing, and the honest power we share when we stop pretending people dramatize the eighth. It doesn't require melodrama, it requires consent and clarity. Money here means mortgages, joint accounts, investments, payouts, and the courage to tell the truth about power and dependency. Intimacy here means the part you don't perform, the grief you metabolize, the body memory you honor so it doesn't run the show from the shadows. Simple eighth house care is paperwork done on time, conversations about money without flinching, and the choice to release a loyalty that turned into a trap. If Pluto or Saturn lives here, you'll get a graduate education in boundaries. If Jupiter or Venus lives here, shared resources and trust can bless your life when the agreements are clean. The eighth house is compost. What you bury properly becomes fuel later. House 9 is the horizon and the passport and the classroom that doesn't feel like school. It's travel, higher learning, publishing, faith, philosophy, the meaning that knits your week together so chores feel like part of a larger story. When this room is ignored, you feel clever but empty, efficient but unmoored. When it's fed, you feel like your efforts belong to a lineage and a direction. The sign here shows how you seek truth. Planets show how loudly the seeking calls. Mercury here wants to teach and translate. Jupiter here wants to roam and write and bless Saturn. Here wants a disciplined path. Degrees, mastery, vows worth keeping. You don't need a plane ticket to feed this room. You need a book that changes your angle, a walk where you let yourself believe in something again, a practice that returns you to wonder without selling your skepticism. Your ninth house is permission to zoom out so your map makes sense. House 10 is the rooftop and the plaque on the door. It's career, calling, reputation, the public face of your work, the structures you build where the world can see standing at the top of the wheel. This is the room where outcome matters, not because numbers define your worth, but because your efforts deserve impact and your craft deserves a container. The sign on this cusp describes how you lead and what success feels like in your bones. Planets here are loud. Sun here wants to be seen because it has light to give. Venus here makes brands believable, teams kinder, products beautiful. Mars here delivers. Jupiter here expands reach. Saturn here stabilizes and legitimizes with receipts. If your 10th house aches, it may be because you're meeting someone else's version of success. Your 10th doesn't need a promotion, it needs integrity. The most practical 10th house move is a cadence you keep. Publish weekly, deliver on time, show your work. Name your standards and let your outcomes accumulate like bricks. That's how roofs hold. House 11 is the courtyard, the group text, the meetup, friends, networks, allies, audiences, causes, the bigger we you contribute to. When this room is vibrant, you feel less alone in your weirdness and more resourced in your goals. When it's neglected, you try to make one relationship do the work of a village, and it breaks under the weight. The 11th asks two simple questions. Who are your people? And how do you contribute? Not who is coolest or who has followers, but whose presence makes you braver and kinder? And where does your small, consistent act help the whole? Jupiter here loves communities with momentum. Saturn here prefers a board with minutes and a mission that survives moods. Uranus here wants innovation and future building. Venus here makes gatherings gracious. The hack is scheduled reciprocity. Host once a month. Show up for others twice a month. And let your calendar prove you live inside a human web. House 12 is the library after hours and the retreat space in the quiet at the bottom of a breath. It's sleep and solitude, imagination and the unconscious, endings and release, the sabbatical you take so you can return. People fear this room because it asks you to stop doing long enough to remember you have a soul. But the 12th doesn't demand sainthood. It asks for 5 minutes where no one needs anything from you. A walk without your phone. Music in the dark, a prayer that isn't posted, tears you don't apologize for. If Neptune lives here, art is medicine. If Saturn lives here, boundaries against self-sacrifice are salvation. If Jupiter lives here, private faith grows like ivy. If Mars lives here, protect your energy fiercely. You do not owe the world your last spoon. The 12th house lets compost become soil, so your first house can sprout without strain. Now, step back and notice the cross beams. Houses are not isolated. They speak in pairs and axes that stabilize the chart like a compass. 1 and 7, me and we. 2 and 8, mine and ours. 3 and 9, details and meaning. 4 and 10, private life and public work. 5 and 11, personal expression and collective contribution. 6 and 12, daily maintenance and deep rest. When a room is chaotic, look across the wheel. Its partner often holds the key. If your 10th house is relentless, your 4th needs protection. If your 2nd is tight-fisted or leaky, your 8th wants a conversation. If your 6th is swallowing your life, your 12th needs sacred time the calendar can't steal. The axis view keeps you from overcorrecting. You don't need to quit your job to protect your home. You may need one immovable 4th house ritual at 9 p.m. that the 10th can't negotiate away. You don't need to become a monk to stop drowning in errands. You may need 12 minutes in the 12th every morning before the 6th starts issuing orders. Angles matter, too. The 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th cusps are called angles because planets near them act like anchors. If a planet sits close to your ascendant, first, people feel it immediately, near your IC. 4th, it shapes your foundation and private story. Near the descendant, 7th, it shows up through partners and opponents, the people who walk right up to you and teach the lesson. Near the midheaven, 10th, it becomes visible to the world. 2 charts with the same planets can live very different lives depending on where those planets sit relative to the angles. This is why house placement is not seasoning. It's the pan you cook in. What about house rulers? Every house has a sign on its cusp. The planet that rules that sign becomes a delegate for that life area. If Aries is on your 2nd house cusp, Mars becomes the delegate for your money and values. Where Mars lives by house will tell you where money decisions are made and where resources flow. If Venus rules your 10th and lives in the 5th, your career thrives when you create and perform. If Venus rules your 10th and lives in the 6th, your public work matures through service, craft, and consistent delivery. Follow rulers like wires through the walls, and you'll see how rooms light each other. And yes, the house systems debate exists, different ways of drawing the rooms, but today you don't need to pick a team to get value. If you've ever moved apartments, you know, some kitchens are wide, some are narrow, some have a useless drawer that sticks, but you still cook dinner. If you use one system consistently, you'll learn your home. If you peek at another, treat discrepancies as experiments. If a planet changes rooms between systems, try tending both rooms for a month and see which one changes your life. Let's make this real with a few gentle portraits that sound like people you know. There's Lila, who kept rebranding her career while ignoring the 4th, 10th axis. Every time the 10th demanded more, the 4th collapsed and took her mood with it. She didn't need a new logo. She needed a bedtime and a kitchen she liked being in. She moved a lamp, bought a secondhand table that fit her space, set a no laptop rule for the hour before sleep, and asked one person to call her on Tuesdays so she wouldn't work until midnight out of loneliness. 6 weeks later, her 10th felt sturdier, not because the world changed, but because the house underneath it stopped trembling. There's Marco, whose 2nd 8th axis was a mess he feared talking about money with his partner, then exploded at tax time. They put a numbers date on the calendar, wrote down hours, mine, and shared projects, and chose rules that matched their personalities. A threshold for purchases without consult, a fund that didn't need justification, an automatic transfer that happened even in thin months so savings wasn't a guilt ritual. Their fights evaporated because the room had a checklist instead of a ghost. There's Priya with a Neptune in the 3rd and Saturn in the 9th. She thought she was bad at focus. It turned out she needed music to corral thoughts and a defined study path. She switched to analog notes for ideation, digital for drafting, gave herself an actual syllabus, and discovered her brain wasn't broken. Her hallway just needed lights. You can walk through your own house today without memorizing anything. Stand in each room for a minute in your mind. What is the first house asking at the start of your day? What is the second protecting when you say, I can't afford that? What is the third drowning in that one block of time could drain? What does the fourth want more than perfection? What would the fifth do for 10 minutes if nobody could grade it? What can the sixth automate so your life stops, depending on heroics? Which seventh house agreement would turn a recurring fight into logistics? What eighth house honesty would stop the leak? Which ninth house book would reroute your week back to meaning? What 10th house cadence would make your reputation a byproduct of consistency? Which 11th house person needs your yes this month? And which group could you leave kindly because you're done? What 12th house practice can happen tomorrow morning even if nothing else changes? Notice how often the fix is earlier than you think and smaller than you fear. The houses don't ask for grand gestures. They ask for room-appropriate care. You don't prune roses with a chainsaw. You don't wash a rug with a pencil. You pick the right tool for the right room, and the house stays gentle to live in. There's one more thing I want to hand you because it turns maps into movement, a weekly walkthrough ritual. Pick the same morning each week. Look at your calendar like a floor plan. Put one tiny act in each of the 6 axes, a first house start ritual. A second eighth money touch, pay, save, cancel, discuss, a third ninth bridge, 1 conversation and 1 curiosity, a fourth 10th stabilizer, home chore scheduled, public deliverable named, a fifth 11th balance, 1 self-expression block and 1 community act, a 6th 12th rhythm, 1 preventative habit and 1 slice of quiet. It takes 15 minutes to plan, an hour to do across the week, and it will change how the whole house feels because you're speaking to every room, not just the noisy ones. If there are interceptions, signs that don't appear on any house cusp, don't panic. It simply means those sign energies live more internally and often expressed through planets and rulers rather than doorways. If 2 houses share the same sign on their cusps, a duplication, that tone gets emphasized in your life. You don't fix it. You get fluent in it. The goal isn't a perfect blueprint. The goal is a home you can breathe in. You might be wondering how transits, the moving weather, affect these rooms. Think of Jupiter as a party that stops by to enlarge a room. Say yes more in that room, but keep your furniture intact. Think of Saturn as a building inspector. Strengthen the beams, and you'll earn a long lease. Think of Uranus as an update. Change 1 rule per month, and you won't need a revolution. Think of Neptune as a fog machine. Lower your contrast, double your craft, keep wonder without losing your wallet. Think of Pluto as a contractor who composts. Let 1 necessary ending happen cleanly, so a cleaner beginning can take root. You don't need exact dates today. You just need to recognize the flavor and match your scale of action to the scale of weather. Before we close, put your hand on 1 doorknob in your mind, the room that lit up while you listened. Ask it 1 question. What is the smallest thing I can do this week that would make you easier to live in? Not the perfect thing, the smallest thing. A bag of groceries and a budget talk, a lamp bulb and an earlier bedtime, a 10-minute doodle, a trash bag, and a drawer. A sentence said kindly, a walk without your phone. If you do that for 6 weeks, you'll look up and wonder why life feels less like whiplash and more like music you can dance to. That's the full house map, 12 rooms asking for your attention in different ways. If this helped, subscribe and tell me your rising sign and which house you're choosing to tidy first, plus the micro habit you'll use to do it. Share this with someone who knows their sign but still feels stuck. The rooms change the story. Save this episode for reference. When life gets loud, return to the room that's calling and give it 10 minutes of love. If this field guide made your chart feel like a house you can care for, come play, where you can put your hands on the tools. Visit mysticbolt.com and wander the free apps. Pull a spread in Tarot Studio when you want a symbolic mirror for the room that's asking for attention. Use the Rider-Waite Tarot app for a quick nudge before you choose the week's 10th house, deliverable, or 5th house creative play. Take a free tarot reading to set a theme for your 9th house so your calendar remembers why it matters. Tune your focus with chakra frequencies when the 3rd and 6th house get noisy and your brain needs a channel that isn't punishing. Tell me in the comments below which room you're tending this week and the one small action you're actually going to take. Move the lamp, make the call, block the hour, have the talk, throw out the broken thing, schedule the good thing. Your chart doesn't need you to be a different person. It needs you to be the caretaker of a home that finally feels like yours.